20, or if, yeah, let's just see the numbers. I forget how many registrants we have, but I think we have a good amount. Welcome everyone. We're gonna get started in a few seconds. I didn't even ask you, Tara, Krista, and Megan. I guess we're good to go, right? We're supposed to be good to go. We're good to go. Okay. Yeah, Meg, whenever you want, feel free to hit the recording and get going.
Great. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Activity Strong webinar. My name is Meg Laporte, and I am a member of the Link Senior Marketing Team. For today's webinar, we are providing one free NAB, NCAP, NCCDP, NCTRC, and NZ, that's for New Zealand, SRDT CEU credit. To be eligible for CEU credits, you need to remain in this webinar for the full hour. And at the end of the webinar, I will provide a link. I will provide a required post-webinar, CEU survey evaluation link in the webinar room chat box. And I will also send it by email this Thursday. If you have any questions, please email us at webinars@linksenior.com. CEU certificates will be issued on Friday afternoon. Please check your spam folder. And the survey, by the way, must be completed by midnight Eastern time this Thursday. And I'll give it to you, Charles.
Thanks so much, Meg. Did you hit recording?
Yes, it's recording. We're recording.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Welcome everyone. I'm very excited to be with these 4 other people on Zoom and all of you joining from the audience. My name is Charles and I'm with Link Senior. Before we get started, I do want to share that we did have a great transition at Link Senior, where Megan McMahon, who was foundational, inspirational, and I guess almost quote unquote the maker, well, not really the maker, a huge element in the making of Activity Strong, moved on to other purposes, and we remained friends. And we have this great friend of ours called Meg Laporte, who had been working for us for a month, who decided to help out and help us lead Activity Strong. So thank you, Meg Laporte, for taking this on, and again, excited to be with you all. So as a reminder, this is Activity Strong, our webinar. Today, we're going to talk about a super exciting topic. I could talk about it for hours, not because I'm as good as the speakers, not at all. It's just because there's a huge need for this in the industry, in this market, especially now. So we're going to be talking about engaging residents and volunteers in creative arts programming. And I'm going to introduce the speakers in just a few seconds. Before I give you a little bit of background, Activity Strong, just as a reminder, is something that we at Link Senior started, but we're definitely not alone doing it. We're doing it with amazing partners that include Activity Connection, NAP, and NCAP. And some of you might have been on this type of webinars before. As you know, the chat gets very lively. If you have questions for the panel, please put them in the Q&A section of Zoom. And then if you want your chat contribution to be seen by everyone, just make sure you select the everyone in the drop-down so that everybody can see it. So just a little bit of additional background. Link Senior, again, is this company. We're based in Washington, D.C. We have what we think is cool values, anyway, strong values. One of them is old people are cool. We think that everybody is cool, including elders, and obviously Activity Strong, where the sole purpose is to acknowledge the amazing work of resident engagement professionals, activities, and life professionals, but also hopefully empower and educate with great learning opportunities and forward-thinking ideas. The company itself, as I mentioned, we're based in Washington, D.C. We love to work with forward-thinking providers. Our work is essentially all about elevating engagement by helping any team member actually almost engage any residents and save time, which is very important these days. Our work is quote unquote evidence-based, and we're proud of that. It was published in a peer-reviewed journal. And obviously, should any one of you have questions about our work, please feel free to reach out. So there's many ways of introducing our great speakers today, but I'll start maybe just with two, three thoughts. One is, I think we're all very much aware of the staffing crisis going through our industry, which is unfortunate. As you might remember, well, I'm actually French, and even in France, we have staffing issues, which tells you. But beyond that, obviously, there are not many ways to bridge and fix this challenge. And obviously, one of them is how we branch out and we seek help from other departments and help from volunteers. And we found through, I mean, in a lot of our experiences that creative arts is a great way to start, continue, and elevate that engagement piece. I've actually known Tara for, what did we say, Tara? 15 years, 16 years, a long time. Tara's an amazing person, an amazing music therapist. Please reach out to her if you have any questions about anything music and beyond. But she is the founder and music therapist at Harmony in Dementia. And along with her, we have Megan Young. Megan, very happy to have Oma back on a webinar. Last time was great. It was a long time ago, so it's definitely due for a refresh. And but we're very excited to have you, Associate Director of Oma, and joined also by Krista Peterson, sorry, Assistant Director with Oma. So thank you all for joining, and I'll turn off my camera and let you be quote unquote the stars, which you are.
Thank you so much, Charles. We're so excited. I know on behalf of the three of us, we had meetings to discuss, and it's been great to get to know Tara too and her work. So we're really excited to be here. I think Krista, are you still good? Okay. So just an overview of what we're planning to cover today. If you haven't heard about the Opening Minds Through Art program, we'll talk just a little bit about it because that's kind of crucial to our ways that the volunteers interact with the people we work with living with dementia. So just a little bit more about how the program is structured and what it looks like. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the impact of the OMA program on volunteers and why just doing this art program really elevates people's perceptions and attitudes towards people living with dementia. And then Krista will cover some training and recruiting and why we do the things we do with our OMA volunteers. And then we'll also talk about this new age, this new way of utilizing virtual programming with volunteers too. And then we'll pass it on to Tara to talk about her music and the power of music. And I don't know, Tara, do you want to talk about any of your points?
Yeah, just, those first, 5 and 6 is just, we're going to just really highlight the power of music, why it's beneficial for older adults, kind of the why behind why music is so important, what we see every day in our work in dementia communities, and then go into why it's important to utilize music enrichment volunteers, as well as some training and resources that you can help provide for them to make it a more purposeful and meaningful activity. So, and then we'll end on questions.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Happy to, and I think Charles and Meg both mentioned it, but please put questions as we go in the chat or in the Q&A box, and we're glad to take those at the end. So just a little bit of background if you haven't heard about the Opening Minds Through Art program. OMA is short for that. It was developed in 2007 at the Scripps Gerontology Center at Miami University in Ohio. I saw we had some Ohio folks on there, so welcome. And it was designed to combine the founder, Dr. Elizabeth Locon's background in art education, and then what she was doing in the gerontology program. So she kind of combined all of these elements to design this program to pair people living with dementia with students and younger people in nursing homes so that they can really thrive and get to know each other. So far, it's been replicated in over 200 locations. And here at Miami, we've had over 2,500 students go through the program since 2008, but as there's over 200 locations, so there's students around the world now too. We took OMA to Indonesia. Dr. Locon just got back from Indonesia, so it's kind of cool to be an international program now. But just a little bit more about session structure and what it looks like. So The sessions are designed to pair, again, one person living with dementia with a student or a younger person, a volunteer, and the volunteer is trained. They go through a couple hours of training, and Krista will talk more about that in a little while. But they sit each week for about 10 to 12 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks, depending on program structure. And the two of them work together for that long, once a week, and they do various art projects. And each week it's a different project, so they're learning something new together, and they usually learn something new about each other each week. And even though a lot of the times we get feedback from students like, my artist didn't remember my name, but they were happy to see me. They were so excited to see me, and we were so happy that we got to do this together. And so it's just that feeling, that mutual feeling of joy and being able to spend that time together that we hear a lot from our volunteers. So the mission of the program is to build bridges across age and cognitive barriers through art. So we do that through, again, these structured one-to-one sessions with volunteers and artists engaging in artwork that's abstract. And so a lot of this artwork, and I think you'll just have to kind of zoom through these, Krista, but OMA artwork is inspired by modern abstract art. So as we're flipping through the next few slides, you'll see paintings of varieties of shapes and colors and asymmetrical and symmetry and contrast. Just a lot of tools, and all of these were designed by people living with dementia with the support of volunteers. And so we really utilize our volunteers to help them make choices. They have choices along the way in the program. They really help walk through the step-by-step process of each project. And then you end up with all these complex, beautiful looking pieces of artwork that are unique to that person and individual, and just kind of beautiful legacy to leave once they pass away too for their family members. So it's a beautiful kind of culmination of everything. And then at the end of the semester, I think we can head there, Krista, thanks. The end of the semester, or year annually, some people do annual art shows. We showcase all of this beautiful artwork for the community, for the volunteers, their families, for the older adults and their families. It's just a great big event to get everybody together to celebrate the success of both creativity and friendship. And again, this program relies on those one-to-one interactions. So we get all of this beautiful artwork, but a lot of it is just the community building that happens between participants. So you'll see here a room crowded full of people. We invite the older people living with dementia. Their artist comes and they get matched up and they spend the evening together wandering the galleries and having fun. And usually there's cheese, wine and cheese and all this stuff. So it's a really fun event just to kind of host and pull the community together. But I think we just have a short video of what OMA is and just give you a little bit more context on what it is, and then we'll go into the research and how we train our volunteers.
People with intact cognition oftentimes try to free ourselves from the limitation of having to draw this thing that looks like that, you know. And when you are free from that, you can then break into the abstract world more directly. So when the ability to express is impaired, they think the content is gone. And that's where the violation of human rights come in, because the human is still there. It's just that they are locked behind the disease. It doesn't mean that there isn't somebody in there that's trying to express. And so art is a sort of channel. When logical thinking and verbal expression is impaired, art is still there for them to express.
And when I see what I do and I realize how it comes out, I'm beside myself.
Working with people with dementia and learning more about it, not just via textbook and what you see in movies, how it's portrayed, I guess. It's changed my experience at Miami because now it's everything that I do here. So I don't really know what I would have done without this program. I think that being involved with this has given me purpose on this campus. I work and I have friends and I feel like I'm doing stuff, but gerontology has made me feel like what I'm doing is really going to make a difference, especially at Miami, because I can be a part of the gerontology club that raises money and I can help the residents in the community. And it furthers my, like, I don't know, drive to do that throughout my entire life.
You must be somewhere in London. You must be loving your life and your way. You must be somewhere.
Too often people with dementia in long-term care facilities, everything's decided for them and they don't make decisions and it takes too long, it's too confusing. And this is the 1 hour where they get to decide everything on their own. So choices are built in, opportunities for autonomy is built into the process, and then success is almost guaranteed.
There's no other experience possible, I think, that brings together two very different generations where they both benefit from an interaction with each other. And it goes back to our core values of love and honor and how we interact with others.
You see the very authentic relationship that they have formed and just how incredibly proud the artists are of the work that they have produced. You see them leave in a completely different mindset than they entered that room.
It's our obligation to provide as rich and a full experience for these individuals who are suffering with dementia as humanly possible.
The mission of the program is building bridges across age and cognitive barriers. So that bridge is actually a relationship, and within that relationship, at the foundation is love.
Okay, well, I think there may have been a little bit of sound issues, but we'll make sure that you have access to that video and all the other ones we have on our website too. We have a lot of other ones, testimonials from artists and students as well. But I'd love to just talk a moment just about a little bit of the research that we've done with our volunteers specifically, and kind of the impact of the program has had on them. So just in general, we've published over 10 studies on the program, both from the older adults perspective who have participated and the students who have participated, the volunteers, as well as some other special interest pieces. But I guess the catch line is they've all shown the benefits for everybody, and it's kind of cool to see the impact on both sides of them. And today, since it's more about engaging volunteers as well as residents, I just wanted to cover some of the important highlights of why we do this and why we involve younger people. Why do we make it intergenerational to include these volunteers and programming too. So one of the ways that we do this is we measure a pre-post of volunteers' attitude changes over the course of a semester. So we use a couple of different scales. This graph that you're seeing here is using the dementia attitude scale. And we measure kind of just general attitudes towards people living with dementia. And as you can see here, the change over the course of a semester is more about 94%. The majority of people have more positive attitudes towards people living with dementia after their experience in the OMA program. not many, just a couple people didn't change their attitudes and a few became more negative. But again, the majority, 94%, were more positive after their experience. And so another scale that we use is the allophilia scale. And so this really comes into play. I know Charles briefly mentioned it, but with workforce crisis of trying to have people get the experience, get into working with people living with dementia, get into a nursing home, having that opportunity to learn what else is out there. We want to be able to understand that internally for students too. So this allophilia scale is the liking of the other, some kind of out group other than yourself. So instead of just reducing a prejudice, kind of tolerating, saying, oh, I tolerate older people living with dementia, you're building an actual liking of those people. So we hope to build this caring workforce, this to instill in students and in volunteers and younger people that there's so much good and joy and fun that can come from working with these people living with dementia. And I don't know that I have to say that to this group, but just to be able to advocate for that going forward and bringing young people in to work with your residents, it's huge. So what we do here, again, it's that pre-post, and this is what we've seen. So students who are involved in OMA are that blue color, which is the top line. And then students who weren't involved in OMA were also included just to get a comparison of the two groups. So the allophilia scale was arranged into different factors. So there was the affection, comfort, and kinship, engagement and enthusiasm, and then just an overall score. And as you can see, the students who were involved in OMA had they increased in all four categories, their allophilia, their attitude toward these people living with dementia increased. So it was cool to see this, because if you look at the bottom line, there was no change for students who didn't participate in OMA. So we know that the OMA program really helps the volunteers understand kind of their generating a more liking of. And then just a similar example, but with medical school students. So students who are training to become medical school professionals, this program can even have a similar effect. And so we see, again, the top line are students in a medical program, and then the bottom line are students who are non-OMA students. I'm sorry, top line OMA students in a medical program, bottom line are students not involved in OMA. But same thing, and these are people that are going to become doctors or future healthcare professionals. So it's even more important to continue building and bringing people in to be able to share the relationship part of it, to have them experience something where they're working with somebody one-on-one. And so that's a little bit more about the research, but I'll turn it over to Krista to talk about our volunteers.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan. So a challenge for so many is just finding volunteers. So here's obviously just a few places to look. OMA's done a lot of work with recruiting volunteers through local universities, obviously at Miami, but then while we train facilitators, connecting them with other universities around them. The important thing here is to really showcase what you need when recruiting volunteers. Putting out a general flyer might engage a couple people here and there, but outlining your need and the impact that you can foresee can really call to people. A little background from both Megan and I, we were students, we were volunteers with OMA at Miami University, and now we get to work and be part of OMA at a bigger level, but that's the impact that it had on both of us. Another important thing for you and potential volunteers is working together to creating that community of support amongst each other. As a volunteer's point of contact, you become their personal cheerleader, celebrating their wins on site in their personal lives. You become a teacher, a trainer, like Dr. Elizabeth Locon for both Megan and I. You become their support person and a mentor. Again, listed here some examples, and I come from working with at hospice. Was a volunteer coordinator for a while, so I also just really love this role of bringing students in, like the testimonial you saw in the video of the impact it can have just by participating in a program like OMA. But utilizing hospice organizations, most of them need to have some sort of volunteer base program. And so if you have hospice coming in to your community or wherever you are, asking them, hey, can we have volunteers? Can we train them to be OMA volunteers, things of that sort. As mentioned earlier, you become an integral part of your volunteers' time, and it really stems from the onboarding and training. So not only letting the volunteers or the students know the outcomes and the options for what they will be participating in, but also giving them the base to be successful. Start building your relationships with them. And it's also a time to help you get to know them and them get to know you. So with OMA, we train them on a variety of topics. Typically, our volunteer training is about 2 hours long. Things from just a general overview of what dementia is, how not to see it as this thing to be afraid of, but how we can support and offer choices. And then, of course, the importance of art, supporting the person living with dementia in creative practice, and then patience and imagination, and focusing on those remaining strengths, really giving the artist the opportunity to succeed with the support of a volunteer nearby. And of course, at the same time, building those really strong relationships between the two of them. Oops. And then moving on from OMA, another great opportunity that we've been working on is something that's called Scripps Avid. So obviously with having to go virtual during the pandemic, we had to kind of shift gears and figure out how else we could engage volunteers through art. So Scripps Avid was created. We received funding through the National Endowment of the Arts and Next 50 to build a platform where we can connect older adults and students using art, again, as that medium to help build those relationships. So AVID stands for Arts-Based, Virtual, Intergenerational, and Dementia Friendly. It's free to use for everyone. You create an account with your general information, lets us know what generation you're in, and then your availability to meet. So from there, we connect users based on that criteria from a different generation and their availability to be able to meet weekly for about 45 minutes to an hour. Last semester, we kicked everything off with about 45 pairs, and feedback so far has been super positive from both sides. Quotes like the one you see here on screen show the impact of what giving people the opportunity to connect can look like, even when it's with complete strangers, which is really cool. None of these for our pilot, they were students at Miami, and then a lot of Miami University alumni. So they didn't know each other. They were just brought together randomly to engage in arts-based prompts and get to know each other. So here you can see what an AVID meetup might look like, where two people can chat. You can see the video platform on the left, and then on the right side would be an arts-based prompt. So there's over 70 prompts to choose from, all low-tech projects with easily accessible materials that they can kind of scroll through different options, from getting to know each other to visual arts to poetry, storytelling, things of that sort. So again, art serves as the stepping stone to get to those questions and build relationships. So you can, again, see in this image above the questions, it would have the example of the project. It would show you some images of potentially a finished project, but oops, I apologize. And then questions to engage with each other. So we have one that is tracing kitchen utensils. And then of course, questions that would go along really great with that is talking about family memories of cooking or favorite recipes, or do you like to cook? So again, just deepening that relationship. And as I mentioned, just a quick plug, Scripps Avid is free to use. So we would love to connect you or residents or people within your lives who are looking to connect intergenerationally with others.
All right. Thank you, Krista. Thank you, Megan. It's so exciting to learn more about the programs that OMA offers. My name is Tara Jenkins. I've been a music therapist working in the dementia community for almost 17 years. And I started out in activities. So I started out in life enrichment, both as an activities assistant and director. So I see there's a lot of folks in activities here. I saw some executive directors. I saw a former music therapist. So I'm really excited to spend the next part of our talk. This will kind of be where we're going to focus for the next few minutes, is on music. And I wanted to start with the power of music and why it's beneficial for older adults. And what I will say, these next 2 slides, these are just highlights. I do our presentations on this specific topic. So there is a lot here. So I really just wanted to give you a few highlights, a few takeaways when it comes to the why, of music. So when we think of music, it accompanies our life both personally and culturally. It's one of the first things we respond to in the womb, and it's one of the last things we respond to at the end of life. Engaging in music activates many areas of our brain, including those associated with memory and emotion. And music is the only sensory input that is processed in our entire brain simultaneously. So since musical processing is generalized throughout the brain, rather than localized in one area, this is why someone might be able to sing even though they can no longer speak. So that's one of those reasons. And I'm sure in all of your work, you may have encountered that along the way. So that's one of the whys. And all of this can account for why our residents living with dementia can retain musical information longer and recall musical memories more clearly than non-musical memories. Slide. Thanks, Krista. So again, music benefits for older adults, there's a lot of them. I just highlighted a few here. But older adults have strong emotional responses even when they're no longer verbally communicating or otherwise responding to typical methods of care. So if we can provide individuals living with dementia a way to access experiences and express a range of emotions, it can really be a substantial improvement to their quality of life. So some of the benefits that music can provide, it can help bridge the gap for those who are losing the ability to interact with others in the world around them. Using live and recorded music can help assist with meaningful connections and show us what our residents are still capable of. And music can also be a helpful resource to foster meaningful visits throughout the day and create positive interactions with others. Slide. So before we get into the benefits of utilizing music enrichment volunteers and talking a little bit about how you can provide additional training, I did want to show you what we do as music therapists versus what a music enrichment volunteer might do. And again, this is a very simplified list of what we do as music therapists, but I wanted to give you a few examples so you know what makes us different. And so when you're advocating for different programming in your communities, you can know, what is a music therapy program versus what will a music enrichment volunteer do. And so we're a clinical and evidence-based practice. Essentially, we're using different aspects of music to achieve individualized goals both in and outside of sessions. And we have specialized education and training. So we have anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 clinical training hours before we sit for our board exam. So we have 4 years of coursework, we do a 6-month internship, and then we get the credential MTBC, Music Therapist Board Certified. So we have all those clinical hours of training before we sit for our credential, and then all of our experience. So for me, I now bring 17 years of advanced education in dementia and working with caregivers and professionals and students and all of that. So all of that comes with it as well as a music therapist. So just important to mention that. Music volunteers, they're sharing their talent and their passion for music with residents, but they don't conduct an assessment, they don't develop a treatment plan, and their services don't require this extensive advanced education in music, medicine, and psychology, which is what we have as a music therapist. So all of that to say, you can still use music programming in your services. I don't want to say you can only use music therapy, but it's important to not advertise music enrichment volunteers as music therapy. It's important to make a distinction. And I really like the term music enrichment because that encompasses all different types of music activities. you know, you can do a lot to help encourage volunteers, but, you know, we want to make sure that we're not confusing the public. You know, if someone knows what music therapy is, we want to make sure that they know, oh, you have a music therapist on staff, or you're providing music enrichment. So that's really, that was the goal of this slide, that I just wanted to share that with you. Slide. So now some of the benefits of music enrichment, and I'm sure I am preaching to the choir here, that you all experience this, but one of the big ones is prioritizing a budget. So, you know, if you have music enrichment volunteers, you can focus your budget on a music therapist, on entertainment, other programs, and paid services. You can provide more of a diverse activity calendar. So scheduling volunteers after mealtime. So if some folks, you know, a lot of people like to go back to their rooms, but maybe some people want to be active. Or during an outing, maybe a lot of people leave the building. That's a great time to bring in music enrichment volunteers. Sometimes you have large events that some residents aren't interested in. They don't want to participate in a group. It's a great time to pair them up with a music enrichment volunteer. And that all filters into those purposeful and creative activities. The other big one, and I know because I was an activities director, is supporting time management for the activities department. It's huge. There's not enough of you. There's not enough hours in the day. And that's all jobs in a dementia community, not just activities. You know, there's always something. So can you bring in music enrichment volunteers so you can schedule a team meeting, so you can go to that training, so you can look at documentation and things like that? And so I saw a question about where to get music enrichment volunteers. I think the best thing is when you're doing a volunteer orientation, find out if they have that passion, find out if they play an instrument, find out if that's a hobby for them. That's where you're going to start with music enrichment volunteers, is if they have a passion for music. I would say that's probably the best place to start. Slide. Thank you, Krista. So when you're utilizing music enrichment volunteers, again, a lot of these activities you're probably already doing in your programming, but I wanted to highlight a few of these bullet points. Recitals are a really big one. So a lot of times if you have a music enrichment volunteer, and this could be at the college level, this could be high school, middle school, they need to practice for a recital. So can they come in and share their primary instrument or their voice if they're a vocalist? Or you can host the recital at your assisted living or your dementia community, you know, and you can make it a big event and host a recital for that music enrichment volunteer. Some other things there, you know, they can lead music bingo or music trivia, doing a special event like a silent disco. There's several companies out there that provide the headphones and provide all the things you need for the silent disco. Music enrichment volunteers could help with that. I see the question, what is a silent disco? Essentially, sometimes an entertainer can be too loud or the volume can be uncomfortable for folks. So everybody wears headphones and they're all listening to the same music. So they can still dance and interact and socialize, but it can be more comfortable and less of a sensory overload for folks living with dementia. So there are a lot of different companies out there that provide things for silent discos. And if you wanna, I'll give my contact information at the end. I've got a couple articles I can send you about them if you're interested in that. The one I really want to focus on here is individualized music listening programs. That's where we're going to spend the rest of our time, because that's really where I think music enrichment volunteers can make a huge impact, but also I think there needs to be additional training and resources if you want that to be implemented successfully. So slide. So if you're interested in utilizing music enrichment in this way, I really do think it's essential to have a training program in place. So something additional to your volunteer orientation. This type of training, it sets the resident and the volunteer up for success. It provides tips, tools, resources, and it can make those interactions more meaningful and purposeful than just putting on music and then not really knowing what to do. So the thing I want to mention here before I get into this slide, I say this in all my talks, I don't think it's talked about enough. When we talk about music and dementia care, we talk about all the wonderful things, and I am here to champion that. But music experiences are not universal for everyone. It's really important to keep that in mind. And it's important to recognize that people living with dementia can have an adverse reaction to music. So this is why having a music therapist as a consultant or a trainer can be extremely beneficial if that's something you can provide at your community. As all of us in dementia care, in the dementia care field, we're striving for person-centered care, but not all music experiences will be positive for all people. And so it's important to know what to look out for and how best to manage it. So having a training like this, having somebody who volunteers can ask questions and get support is really important. So one way you might do that is consult a music therapist. So I provide this programming virtually and in person, but if you have a music therapist in your building, I would go there first. If there's a music therapist with a hospice, I would go to them as well. Consulting with a music therapist to design a training program. We can also support an existing program. So if you have a music listening program, if you were trained in music and memory, we can even take that further and be that consultant. We can help create those individualized playlists. We can help educate how you determine music preferences. So there's a lot we can do there to help support the volunteers and also help them create the playlists as well. We can provide that ongoing training and management. So maybe you have a music therapist twice a year, maybe it's virtual, maybe it's in person, and we do a music training for any music enrichment volunteers you have. And then, we have email, and again, this would be a package as a consultant service. So it would be with that music therapist. And then lastly you might receive resident referrals for music enrichment. This is really if you have a full-time music therapist in your building, part-time music therapist, or a music therapist with hospice. A lot of times the way referrals are set up, we get a lot of referrals where it's, Joan loves music and she just wants to socialize. And music therapy can be great for that, but that might be a wonderful opportunity for a music enrichment volunteer. And then the music therapist could go see someone to help manage pain. Pain management and hospice is really big with music therapists. So that might be a priority referral. So that's kind of a way you can seek out referrals for residents. The other thing is, even if I'm somewhere once a month or twice a month, I have weekly sessions, twice a month sessions, depending on budgets and schedules. I know those folks who come to my sessions. And so I could recommend, you could ask your music therapist, Tara, what residents do you think would really benefit? I have this music enrichment volunteer who would benefit. And I could point out to you, 5 residents in a group of 12. These would be the ones who I think could really benefit from additional music throughout their week because it's so important to them. So I think that's something to think about when you're looking to pair up music enrichment volunteers with music therapists and with residents, I should say. So let me just make sure. I'm looking at my notes to make sure I didn't forget anything. Next slide. Thank you, Krista. So another training resource, I will say I co-authored this book, but the goal of this book, Music, Memory, and Meaning, is to have a resource that anyone working with someone with dementia who wants to use music in a meaningful way, all they need is the book and a device to play recorded music, and they are good to go. So if it is not in your budget to hire a music therapist as a consultant, if you don't have the means to do that, maybe that's a goal, as you're doing your budget for next year or something like that. This is another great resource, and it's a good place to start. And it gives volunteers a tool. It gives them a resource, again, to feel more confident in what they're doing. Suzanne is talking about where to find a music therapist. I'm going to get there, Suzanne. So thank you for sharing that. I see that in the chat. But this book, we provide examples on how to determine music preferences. We describe how to set up a music listening environment, and Link Senior is going to give you a PDF for free that are 7 tips for music engagement that I created. So that is a free resource that you can provide to your volunteers as well. Give playlist suggestions. So we have playlists from the 1900s, early 1900s through 1970s. We've got Broadway and country and rock and roll in there, 15 to 20 songs per playlist. And then we have a third part of the book that talks about meaningful discussion questions. So how do you take the music further? What do you do when the music is on? What can you do while listening? And so the reason I wanted to mention this specific resource is because it's a book. I think it's $20 or $25 on Amazon, but then you have it in your community. Then you can have music enrichment volunteers read through it. When they're going to play music for someone, they can open up the book, and they can go to a discussion question. They can go to Love Me Tender, and they can play that if they know the resident loves Elvis. So it's just another example on how you can provide a tool and a resource for music enrichment volunteers. So with that, we're going to go to our next slide, which is resources for both me and Oma. And I'm seeing a lot of people share where to find a music therapist. So that's kind of the last bit of what I'm going to talk about before we open it up for questions. I would recommend the first place to start to find a music therapist is cbmt.org. That's the Certification Board of Music Therapists. So that is the certifying board for music therapists in the United States and several countries internationally. So when you look up, you can look up by name, you can look up by city, you can look up by country. And if you were to look up my name right now, you'll see that I'm due for my continuing ed at the end of December. So what I like about CBMT is it shows you if that music therapist is keeping up with their continuing education. So it's a way that you can find somebody who is active. A lot of folks have mentioned the American Music Therapy Association. It's another way you can find a music therapist, but I wanted to share something about that. It is a nonprofit organization. It does a lot of advocacy in the community. It helps support music therapists, but it's a membership organization. So if you're not paying your membership dues, you won't find a music therapist on that website. So I am a member. You'll see me on both of those websites, but just keep that in mind. When you're searching, CBMT is probably a better place to go. Lastly, you can ask me. I would be more than happy. You can go to my website. My email will be, all of our contact information's on the next slide. You can send me an email directly. Say, hey, I'm in this area. I'm looking for a music therapist. Can you help me? And so I would be happy to put you in contact with a music therapist or reach out to my connections to see if there's someone in your area. Again, I, as a music therapist, provide services virtually in person. So I do groups virtually. I see groups virtually, I should say. I see individuals virtually. And then that really just depends on where folks are in their dementia journey, if that's appropriate for virtual. And then, in person. I'm currently in Austin. I will be relocating to Wilmington, North Carolina. So I hope to be there in the new year. So that's where you can find me in person as well. And then we'll go over to our next slide, which is all of our contact. And I'm seeing a couple things about music. So I'm going to just start with those in the chat, and then we can kind of open it up even more for questions. But someone mentioned about Billboard putting out books for decades. Yeah, that's a great place to start with Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. If a lot of times research suggests music from our late teens, early 20s will be the most beneficial for folks. So it's a great starting point. So if someone was born in 1943, they'd be about 80 today. They're going to respond to music from the early 60s. So that might be where your focus is. And again, you can look up the top Billboard hits or Elvis's top songs, or for me out here, country is huge. So we might look up Texas country artists, Austin country artists. It gets that specific with folks. So it's a great starting point. Stephanie wrote, I have a nonverbal resident that when we do weekly sing-along in her group, she needs no prompting. She knows most of the words. Yes, that goes back to the power of music, and there is science behind it. A lot of times it feels like magic, but there are lots of reasons for that. And that is why music can be so beneficial for folks who can no longer communicate verbally, or who can no longer express themselves. The music is a way that they can express their emotions, and there's so much more there. So thank you for mentioning that. I'm
going to jump in, Tara, real quick.
Yeah, please go right ahead.
Sorry. I just wanted to point out the OMA resources.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I dove to questions, so I appreciate you backtracking.
It's amazing doing these things with people we were already connected to. Obviously, Megan and I work together, getting to know Tara but we still learn so much from each other. And I love that about these webinars and bringing all of our resources together. So again, resources for both sides. If you're interested in becoming an OMA facilitator, we do offer a training for that. They're both virtual or hybrid. So you do some online and some in person. And you can find more info at our website about those different trainings. We also have an Educate course, just kind of gives you the benefits of hosting an intergenerational program. And then we use OMA as the resource behind that, like why it's so important. And of course, using the OMA research. And then we also have 2 free options for you. So we went over Scripps Avid a little bit. Again, I'm happy to have you sign up. You can reach out to me directly with questions about that. If you have people that you want, either students or children in your lives, or obviously the opposite of the older adults, I'm happy to discuss more. And then also on our website, we have the Creative Caregiving Guide, gives you some great free resources of how to engage in different arts programming. So just a few of those. And I'll leave these up, and then I'm sure you'll be shared with our contact information as well.
And I also wanted to add too, I saw we have some great questions, the Q&A, but I wanted to point out, I saw a lot of, with Tara's background as music therapist, I wanted to mention that Krista and I are not trained art therapists. So we do not have the credentialing. I think it's probably very similar to music therapy, just in a different way. So the OMA program doesn't require you to have that certification. So that's not a requirement. We do have art therapists who have gone through the program, but we ourselves don't have that training. So that's just a clarification on that. So we say OMA is more therapeutic art than art therapy, just the process of being sent. But I guess we'll jump into the Q&A questions. I saw the first one come up here from Stephanie about Oma as a German word for grandmother. And yes, we knew that. Dr. Lokan, who created the program, part of her background is her heritage is Dutch. So she used Oma, I think, as the starting point, if I have that right. And then opening minds through art came later. But I did not know, the other part of your question was the use of art and music with older adults as a staple in German elder care. I did not know that. So that was something interesting for me to learn. But I think there's some questions about music in there for you, Tara.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I jumped right in. I got excited seeing things in the chat. I see a question about, can we use this program for other residents that love music? Yes, so the reason we wrote Music, Memory, and Meaning is music therapists, you don't need a music therapist to share music in a meaningful way, but it depends on what you're looking for. It depends on what you want. And I think both programs can exist, and can be very harmonious. And so, I say the more music, the merrier. We have so many people who are being diagnosed with dementia, so many caregivers out there. I also do a lot of trainings about caregiver support. So how caregivers can use music for themselves, for self-care. So yeah, the more people using music, the better, I think. Let's see, I'm looking through here. Have you ever worked with residents making up their own songs? Yes, one of the activities I do as a music therapist is songwriting activities. So we write our own songs, or we'll do fill in the blank. So most recently, if you follow me on social media, I'm at Harmony in Dementia. Next week, I will be showcasing this songwriting activity. What I Like About You, I did What I Like About Fall, and we shared what we liked about the fall time of year. So sometimes we sing about emotions. We might use a blues song. Blues always sings about feelings. So if somebody is really frustrated or angry about something, I might do a blues chord progression on my guitar, and we're going to come up with lyrics about why they're upset or why they're annoyed or why, they don't want to go do the thing that this staff person, that caregiver, they want them to take their medicine and maybe they're upset about that. And sometimes that can alleviate it because, again, they can express their emotions and it might be a little bit easier for them to move forward with that caregiver. So let me just look through here. Okay. I got a question about, what is your opinion on communities having Alexas or Google Dots? So this is, people go back and forth on this. I think having music on in the community can be beneficial, but I think it again comes to music preferences. So there, you know, a lot of folks will have one on in the dining room and things like that, but then you really need to observe. Somebody getting really angry at the dining room table and you don't know why, it could be the music. So keep that in mind. If you have music playing in a common area, if they don't like Johnny Cash and Johnny Cash is what's on while they're eating, that could factor into it. So I wouldn't say don't have Alexas, because I think they're very beneficial and could be very helpful in a lot of different programming, not just music. But I think you have to be aware of how often the music is playing, and you don't want to desensitize folks to music. So if music is playing 24/7, something that was beneficial for them might not be as beneficial. So they do need breaks. We do need silence. We do need rest. That's something else I talk a lot about in a lot of my education and training. So that's a great question. And I think it really depends on your community, and it depends on your residents, and you all know your residents best. So, you know, being able to assess that in the moment, I think is important. Carrie says, in the past, I've used music, songs, and dance movement all together. Yes, I do a lot of movement. I work with physical therapists and, you know, talk about what movements are appropriate for older adults. So just make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're working with your team at your community. You know, but yes, music and movement is great. A lot of times if folks are having trouble walking, there's a lot of research. This is a whole nother topic, but neurologic music therapy, NMT, does a lot of focus on this with folks with gait. So if they're having trouble walking after a stroke, you know, you can pair music to even out the gait. Very simplified answer, but yes, you can use music and movement in a lot of great ways. And I believe you will get the slides, but that's something that Link Senior will have to mention. My social media is at Harmony in Dementia, pretty much everywhere. And I think Oma, your social media is up there too on that slide. So I think that's all the questions.
Well, thank you so much, the three of you. Quite an engaging, rightfully so, very engaging presentation. Thank you so much. And I'm probably sure that I'm sure you realize that the audience was also very thankful for all the resources that you shared. So thank you for that. You know, like Tara, what you just said in the end, which is in the end, it is about the preferences of the residents. Obviously, this is 100% true. Very often you'll probably see the activity calendar of a community where suddenly a music therapist starts to work, and a lot of things bubble up with music or art if it's not therapist. And I think the notion is what I think is very valuable with both of your programs is that in the end you help make it part of the fabric. Because unfortunately, when the music therapist leaves the job or the art therapist leaves the job, sometimes things disappear from the calendar. And having it as part of the fabric with the residents, with the volunteers, with the other department, just make it stick longer, which is obviously beneficial for the residents. So anyway, sorry, long thought, but I thought there was a comment about that at one point. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen just to flash again your contacts. This was amazing and obviously very much needed, and you did a wonderful job explaining it. Thank you so much, Tara, Megan, and Krista. They were shown on the previous slide, but here again are the contacts. Feel free to reach out should you have any questions. I do personally follow OMA and Harmony in Dementia on, I think, at least LinkedIn, and the content is great. So I would definitely recommend that. In terms of follow-up, one of the resources that were shared was this tip sheet that that you all were kind enough to build with us, and think of it as a way to carry on and maybe hopefully try to implement some of these ideas in your community with your residents. In terms of future events, we are very, very excited for our next event on October 17th. It's about the same type of topic, but different. This one is, you know, Dr. Michelle Olson sometimes referred to the quote-unquote green pill, which is another type of intervention, another type of program, another type of activity that people often don't think about, but needs more space in senior living. So very excited about this session. That's on October 17th. And then we have one of our biggest event of the year is our virtual gathering. So these are longer events, 3-hour events, but obviously with still amazing content. And this one, but we're very excited to be partnering with the Center for Innovation, CFI. And as some of you might know, this is the merger of the Pioneer Network and the Greenhouse. And so the topic there is going to be about how we reframe the culture and create meaningful relationships with person-directed living. So stay tuned for more. We're actually meeting this week for the agenda. So hopefully in the coming few days / weeks, the agenda will be fleshed out and available. But you can still feel free to reach out, to register. So wonderful for me, beginning of the afternoon, as I said, in Denver here for the ACA conference. I know that actually Tara Young, probably on the time zone as I am, but Krista and Megan, good afternoon to you. And thank you again for this amazing presentation. Thank you very much.